in 2022 in Osaka, we can see Miss Unik joined us. And we had a very privileged international scholar as the keynote speaker, Professor Fiesta from the UK, from Ireland. I think he moved to Ireland. Okay, and all through the years, we have produced at least 3 books co-edited by the founders, including me. The first one, The Confucian Concept of Learning, and the second one, Confucian Perspective on Learning and Self-Transformation. And this is the newest one, the latest one, Nature, Art, and Education in East Asia. So that's why I want to share with you how we have co-worked to produce this one. And this is a result, the outcome of the international and also intercultural learning. Okay. All right. So can we come back? This one. Okay. All right. So far, is there any question? Is it okay? Okay. Yeah. All right. So I will introduce. I will introduce this book. This book, there are in total 7 authors from Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. Okay. But we have authored 9 chapters. 9 chapters. So the authors. Me and Japan, Professor Kato and Professor Kwak from Seoul, Professor Okabe from Japan, and this is a lecturer, Dr. Lee from Taiwan, and Dr. Mongzen from Japan, and Dr. Choi from Korea. Okay, here is the content. But I will show you a more interesting part from each chapter. Maybe the content is very different from what you have learned before, because the Northeast Asia culture obviously is very different from Indonesian culture. But I think still we can learn the interesting part, from the international collaboration. Each one of us try to develop or try to contribute something unique from our own country and have the international dialogue, sometimes with the Western theories. They will be more acceptable to the Western readership. Yeah, so if we hope to contribute something to produce international publication, maybe we should try to have the international dialogue, using Western theories, Western philosophies, try to produce on that. Okay. All right. I just make a bit translation of my PowerPoint. I don't know if it is right. If it is wrong, please tolerate me, and maybe Mr. Amel will change that, because I make an introduction of the ALP. Is it correct or not?
Okay.
It's okay. Okay, it's okay. Then I will skip it. All right, I will go into the introduction. Because there are 9 chapters of the book. So as the main editor, I must give an introduction of the book. And when we try to publish the book from the international publisher, the publisher will send the proposal to the reviewer as well, the anonymous reviews, and the reviewers will send back their feedback, and they ask, why can't you collaborate between Taiwanese by using Chinese and Korean and Japanese scholars together to work on this concept, especially nature and art? Is there something in common? Yeah. So I try to reply the question in the introduction to explain why we can co-work on this topic. And we are all interested in the nature and art and how they relate to education. And the term art and culture has a very interesting meaning across the three countries or the three cultures. Okay, so this is the introduction. I will read very quickly. The notions of nature, art, and education in East Asia have always been intriguingly intertwined. Although the definitions of art and nature are controversial in contemporary philosophy, the cleavage between art and nature is conspicuously sensed, as art represents the expression of works of purposeful and creative human activity. It denotes the greatest and finest human activity of production. In this way, art is supposed to be opposed to nature, but nature is beyond human control. Nevertheless, the opposition between nature and art is dissolved in East Asia cultures and maybe also in Indonesia culture, within which art and nature are taken to be harmoniously coexisting. I think this is ecology. The studies of art and nature, or Dao in Mandarin, aesthetics and metaphysics in pre-modern East Asia are interwoven with each other, and both are involved in the process of self-cultivation, education. I don't know the Bahasa. Is it okay? Is it logical? Oh, okay. All right. So in ancient times, Korea and Japanese writing adopted Chinese characters and shared the meanings. The Chinese terms of nature, 自然, and art, 艺术, were used cross-culturally in East Asia, but not yet had the meanings of their counterparts, nature and art, in the West. Nature in Chinese is pronounced 自然. In Japanese, 自然. Very similar, right? And in Korean, 家用, yeah. The concept of 自然 did not refer to the physical world and the research objects of science and technology in modern times, but meant spontaneously and self-sowness. This is the old meaning. Since the 16th century, the cultural exchanges between Europe and East Asia has resulted in the publication of European languages, Chinese, Japanese dictionaries, and the European languages, Japanese dictionaries. The intercultural communication and translation led to the transformation or expansion of the meanings of words in their home cultures. Okay, is it okay? Okay. So does the audience got the PDF? Okay, good. All right, in the 19th century, the word nature was widely translated for the Japanese shizen, the modern sense of which was then imported into China and Korea and became familiar and accepted. Here is a very interesting change because in the ancient times, Chinese is the source, or Chinese culture is the source of the East Asian cultures. Chinese culture influenced the other areas. But in the modern times, Chinese culture or the Chinese languages actually use the imported terms from Japan. And the modern senses of nature include the mechanistic, materialistic, and scientific outlook of nature. As for the term art, the Chinese word is 艺 or 艺术. In Japanese, 芸術, which originally means to plan, the skill or technique. It had little relevance to art in modern sense. Since the late 18th century, the word art has been used to translate Japanese 芸術. The modern senses of art involving beauty, creativity, and authorship are invested in 艺 or 芸術 in East Asian cultures. Okay. After centuries of exchange, the terms nature and art can communicate multiple meanings without difficulty across East Asia, but also between the East and the West. Nevertheless, the East Asian terms 自然 or 自然 or 家用 and 艺术 or 艺术 adopt the senses from the West, but still keep the culturally distinct meanings and are consequently able to convey rich and profound implications for education. Nature, as spontaneity or self-flow, also means a state of non-coercion and effortlessness. One of the most important teachings of East Asian education is to follow 自然, nature, to follow nature, to achieve the harmony between nature and humanity, which is the core to self-cultivation as a foundation of East Asian humanistic education. Furthermore, practicing art or skill in the Chinese tradition is one way of pursuing Tao. Okay, there are diverse ways of self-cultivation in terms of East Asian tradition. In this slide, with contributions from authors in South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, this piece explores a wide range of themes related to nature and art in novel ways to bring to light the East Asian educational philosophy to the contemporary global world. These themes include skill acquisition, Japanese calendar art, and the ritual or feelings, garden architecture, and the ritualized body, collaborative poetry art, translational language between humans and nature, the Confucian classical six arts, the artistic embodiment of the Kyoto school, and the heritage art-based education in Korea. So I will share with you each chapter. The content of each chapter. The first chapter is more the literature analysis. So I read Zhuangzi, the ancient classical work. Only piece of it. There is a very interesting short story. It is called the Cookding. Cookding is very skillful to dismember the cow. Okay, Zhuangzi tells several imaginative stories about craftsmanship. The craftsmen include a butcher, Cookding, a swimmer, a wheelmaker, a cicada catcher, a ferryman, a trainer of fighting cocks, a bell stand maker, a draftsman, and a forger of buckles. Their practices are executed with spellbinding fluency and sometimes with awe-inspiring outcomes, such as swimming in treacherous cascades and butchering without hacking, or in producing beautiful items such as bell stands. More interestingly, Zhuangzi's story of craftsmen are pregnant with rich and profound insights for education. The execution of skills to the perfection is conductive to the state of Tao and the Taofu well-being, which informs the awakened life and the art of living. Okay, it is okay. All right, so the first chapter is about how I analyze the short story of Cookding and try to analyze the educational implication. This is a typical way of philosophizing of text. Okay, the story of Cookding, the butcher, perfectly exemplifies the process of skill acquisition and practice. Cookding spends more than 20 years of practicing, day after day, year after year. Somehow, from a novice, he becomes a master who shows exquisite and perfect skill, spontaneously, unconsciously, and beautifully. When Cookding practices skill, he is entirely immersed without self-consciousness. For the viewer, all they can experience is artful and natural performance. Mastery, skill, practice nourishes the life of the actor and the viewer by engaging them in the state of Tao. Okay. Okay, this is a very short story, inspirationally enlightens 3 core concepts of education, maybe in Chinese culture: non-self, body, and mind. Intriguingly, in Chinese language, the words self, body, and life refer to each other. The Chinese term for lifelong or lifetime is 终身, 终身, whole life. 终身 means all one's body, whereas 终身 means all one's life. The body and life, the pronunciation are the same. The body and the life are interchangeably. In addition, the general term for expressing self-cultivation in Chinese language is 修身, 修身, the cultivation of the body. The body refers to the self. Self, body, and life are three interconnected and interreferential words which convey the profoundest message of education. Education is to cultivate the self, the body, and life. Any of these three approaches to education simultaneously and dynamically improves the other. Okay. And Cook-Ding demonstrates the process of the cultivation of the body by refining and his skill execution, and thereby improving the self and the viewers around. The improvement of the self is to attain the Tao by becoming non-self, which is the ultimate of self. And the enhancement of the self and other is to uplift existential well-being or co-beings, which is the nourishment of life. The very short story of Cook-Ding the butcher concentrates the very essence of Chinese humanistic education and opens up an alternative way of soma aesthetic from the phenomenological perspective of skill acquisition. Soma aesthetics and phenomenology are both, learned from the West. So here we can develop a conversation and between East and West, and also intrigues attracts the Western readership. So this is kind of a strategy that we can develop publication. Okay. Next one. All right. Let's start with a very brief introduction of chapter 2, which is very interesting. In contrast to the first chapter, which discusses ordinary people and their seemingly insignificant daily life skills, the second chapter explores the exquisite essences of Japanese classical arts. Professor Kado's calendar arts and the ritual of feelings examines the unique Japanese forms of poetry, waka, and haiku, and provides a fascinating account of the interwoven relationship between time, nature, and art. This chapter includes the unusual theme of Japanese calendar arts. A calendar, as Kado writes, is not only a system for organizing time, but also a system that humanizes time. Throughout human history, crossing east-west boundaries, various calendars have been invented to record time. However, the Japanese poetry of haiku embodies the most delicate and graceful beauty, and how humans experience the cycle of time and nature. Yes. Okay. And Japanese pictures and poetry are good examples of this playful conviviality, featuring refined sensitivity towards seasons as multifarious manifestations of nature. It is significant that Japanese calendar pictures were accompanied by waka poems. Waka, the most influential genre of poetry that goes back to the 7th century, was characterized by the attention paid to various phenomena of seasons. By re-adding and composing waka, people learned the sensitivity towards seasons. The term ritual of feeling is used to denote this shared sensitivity to seasons. Okay, here is an example. Yeah, this picture was drawn by the 17th century poet Basho. Yeah. Basho actually his name is another species of banana. Basho, yeah, banana, yeah, a very special kind of banana. Basho in Chinese we call bajiao, basho. And this poet is really highly respected in the history of Japanese literature. He provides this painting, and also on the right side you can see there are some words, right? This is the poem, Japanese poem, and very few words. It means quietly, yellow mountain, roses fall, sounds of the rapids. This is the poem. And in these poems, they have to include nature, the seasons. So this is another short poetry down on this slide. It is called Old Pound. Have you seen that? Old Pound. Old Pound, frog lip sing, and water sound. So short. It's a very short poem. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into chapter 3. This is also interesting. And Professor Kado introduces the ancient classical architecture to, say something about art and nature and education. And this is the Katsura Imperial Villa and the educational function of Japanese garden architecture. In the 3rd chapter, the Katsura Imperial Villa and the educational function of Japanese architecture. Professor Kato continues to expound upon Japanese calendar art through an unexpectedly novel lens, the architecture. Architecture in the material forms of buildings to protect human beings from hostile changes in weather and seasons. His architecture is perceived not only as an artwork, but also as a response to nature. Kato takes that Katsura Imperial Villa. This was located in Kyoto, which was built in the 17th century, as an example to expose the interplay between Japanese garden architecture and nature. The contrast between the Katsura Imperial Villa in Japan and the cathedral church in the West shows different shades of the human-nature relationship. For example, Western metaphysics emphasizes the sun and light, whereas the moon occupies an unparalleled position in Japanese culture. However, the preference for the moon over the sun in Japanese culture plays a vital role in aesthetics, which is embodied in architecture and poetry. And this author demonstrates a sophisticated connection between Japanese poetry and garden architecture, both exemplified calendar art. Okay, this is the photo of part of the Katsura Imperial Villa. It's still, open to the public, but you need to make registration because it belongs to the Japanese royalty. Mm. Yeah, so in different seasons, because in Japan as well as in Taiwan, we have 4 seasons. So in the fall, the leaves will turn red. And as Professor Kato, the author just mentioned about the significance of the moon. He said that in the West, the art focuses on the sun and light, but in the East, maybe we focus on the moon. So interestingly, in this Kazura villa, they every year host an event for viewing the moon. So, you know, a lot of people will register. The audience is maybe thousands. And the office will make a lottery to select very few people to get in to watch the moon. Okay, I hope that I can show you a very short video. So, I don't know if it works. Can it be shown? So, yeah. So I stopped it for a while. Yes.
造営から400年となる京都市の活
Okay, oh, sorry. This video is a very short news announced by the news people.
Luar negeri bukunya. Luar negeri.
離宮で9月27日、宮内庁の許可を得て中秋の名月を撮影しました。桂離宮は1615年頃、御用税天皇の弟で八条宮家の初代俊仁親王が御殿の一つとして古書院を建てたのが始まりとされています。1881年に八条宮家この日の京都は空気がよく澄んだ秋晴れ。池のほとりに建てられた茶室月波楼で夕日に染まった森や石橋を眺めながら月を待ちました。午後6時前、日没とともに対岸の茶室小金亭の上空が明るくなり、屋根の上に輝く月が登場しました。空と池の幻想的な月の共演が実現しました。
Okay, yeah, it looks very interesting, right? So every year, because in Chinese culture, we have the moon festival, Mid-Autumn Festival. So especially on that date, people will, watch the moon. In Japan, they even host this kind of event, and especially in the garden, in the pond. So there will be a conversation between the sky and the pond. This is the theme of the event. The conversation between the sky and the pond, it caused by the moon and the reflection. So it's really, interesting and very unique, culturally unique. Okay, and now let me introduce chapter 4. Chapter 4 is written by Professor Kwak from Korea. And this author begins chapter 4 with a thoughtful, provoking question. Why and how do human beings learn from the wordless nature. Nature doesn't speak, right? The fact that the nature doesn't speak doesn't mean that it does not have a language. It is just that the language of nature is not the language of man. According to German philosopher Walter Benjamin, the translation of the language of nature of things into the language of man relies on the artistic form of language with its magical power of mimesis. From the perspective, Kwak uses the traditional art, Chinese ink wash paintings, as an example to demonstrate how the language of nature is translated into the language of man. In particular, it is the aesthetic characteristic, 写意性. This in Chinese, but in Korean, it called Saoisun. Yeah, that's Korean. But in Mandarin, 写意性. 写意, yeah, that's right. Of the traditional ink wash painting that can display how Benjamin's concept of mimesis translates the language of nature to the language of man. It's okay. Okay. All right, and 写意性. 写意性. Yeah, 写意性 is one of the characteristics of traditional Chinese brushwork. Chinese traditional brushwork is classified into two main genres, 写意 and 工笔. Yes, there are also these two names for two different techniques. Literally, 写 means is right. 写, yeah, really good. And 意 means idea or concept. So 写意 means to express the idea or sketch the thought. As a genre, 写意 is defined by its freely expressive or abstract brushwork, while 工笔 as the genre refers to realistic paintings with detailed, delicate brush strokes. 写意 painting as the abstract art does not depict objects as they are visually experienced. Although Chinese ink wash paintings may not be seen as identical with Western abstract art, the challenge of understanding and interpreting the idea from the painting surface has persisted through time across the West and the East. All right. So here are the examples of 工笔 and 写意. On the left side, the bird and the flowers, right? Look at the bird. It is drawn detailedly. So it is the 工笔. On the left side, this is the 工笔 drawing. And on the right side, it is the 写意. Yeah, 写意 painting. Yeah. And this is another very famous one from the 15th century by an ancient Chinese painter. And this is also a 写意 painting. Yeah, so, just express the idea. Okay, chapter 5. Chapter 5 is interesting, provided by Professor Okabe. In chapter 5, Okabe suggests an ethics of in-operating community within which people from different cultural backgrounds live together and respect each other. This chapter also draws inspiration from Japanese collaborative poetry and the notion of an in-operating community from French philosopher Jean-Luc Nancy. And this kind of poetry in Japanese is called renga, and rengu, and renshi are forms of Japanese linked verse poetry in which two or more poets compose sections of poems in succession. The first appearance of renga is in the Kinyoshu, 12th century, in which short renga was composed by two poets. The forms of renga really developed in the 15th century, and the standard length was 100 verses, which means that many poets collaborated to compose the poem. As the author points out, traditional Japan was a hierarchical society in which people had different fixed ranks and positions. However, in the process of composing renga, there is no hierarchy, center, or conductor, which shows the undoing of the bounds of the system. Okabe uses Nancy's, I couldn't read, this is French, inoperativeness to interpret the undoing. The further illuminates the way people live together in the modern multicultural world. Okay. This is renga, renshi, and rengu. Okay, this is another example produced by artist in the 17th century. So this is not painting, but calligraphy, and there are 8 lines: 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Actually, there are more. I just pick up 8 lines of the poetry, and each sentence was given by one. So the second sentence was authored by another one. So different, different people, they just keep giving a new sentence to compose the whole poetry. So it is a collaboration. It is a collaboration. I try to make the translation. Is it understandable? The 8 sentences of the poetry. Okay, yeah. So it's interesting, right? In the ancient time, ancient Japan, people developed collaboration in arts. Okay, and this is chapter 6, contributed by Professor Okabe again, and she is talking about the concept of nature and the human being in the 6th chapter from the perspective of the Japanese ecologist and anthropologist Keiji Imanishi. Yeah, Imanishi, yes, and who was both the founder of the journal Primates and the founder of Japanese primatology. So a scientist. Okay. Yes. All right. The way Imanishi studied animals was greatly influenced by cultural anthropology. By adopting cultural anthropology's criticism of Eurocentrism, ethnocentrism, and anthropocentrism, Imanishi developed a fieldwork method of anthropomorphizing animals. Imanishi regarded nature as the world of living things and called it holospecia, wherein a species is named a group of individuals that share the same living style. Chapter 7. And Chapter 7 is contributed by a lecturer in Taiwan, Dr. Li, who is discussing the Chinese ancient 6 arts and the educational practice in a school in Taiwan. So later on, I will show you very short videos about the schools, okay? And Chapter 7 considers what role the pre-modern Confucian curriculum, the 6 arts, plays in the modern educational context. Dr. Li examines the origin, content, and development of the traditional Confucian 6 arts. The term 6 arts first appears in the ancient classic Rise of Zhou Li, which includes 6 subjects: rites, music, archery, driving or riding, literature, and arithmetic. Sometimes literature is also translated as calligraphy. Although parts of the contents of the 6 arts were lost over time and were replaced with the 6 classics by some scholars, the 6 arts are still regarded as core concepts in Confucian education. In modern times, the 6 arts have been given new interpretations by 2 modern Taiwanese scholars. The modern views of the 6 arts is put into practice in the Daohe school. So I will introduce a little bit about the school. To cultivate the ideal modernized Confucian individual, Li argues that the updated version of the 6 arts is feasible for use in the modern global educational system, which adapts the competence-based view of education proposed by the OECD. In its regard, the insights of the ancient Confucian curriculum can be kept alive for today's multicultural world. Oh, yeah, it's nearly done because it's 7, only 2 chapters left. Yeah. Okay, so this is the so-called ancient 6 arts. Maybe I show you part of the video. Okay. Oh, okay. I only show a few minutes. It's long, but only a few minutes. And no words. We can only watch. It's somehow that
大家都以为时代很进步，但进步快速、速食、重复，然后模仿、复制，这些所有的行为是美的杀手，真正美育的杀手。
美育，一个从18世纪开始被提出的概念，长久以来在东西方国家都以不同的形式存在着，默默改变着人们的教育、城市和生活形态。2017年夏秋之交，我们走访了位于台湾新竹的稻禾实验学校，校长曾国俊在这里进行着一场打造现代书院式人文生态村落的实验，从幼稚园到高中进行着美育的全方位融入。
美
This is the kindergarten.
大概是未来社会一个非常重要的基础。美育从儿童做起绝对是对的，从大人做起有它的困难度，是因为大家习惯都养成了。所以我觉得美育的第一点是让小孩子开始懂得怎么看美。我很喜欢建筑师路易康，他讲了一句话，他说最好的教室就是一棵大树的下面，是一个世纪。
其实它这个稻禾的空间不大，但是它因为 我们顺着这边的地形地貌花了一些心思，其实很多的自然的乐趣或野趣就。
Okay. Okay, now yes. Now, okay. I think that would be enough for the video. It only shows the introduction, part of the introduction of the school. But the school is kind of an experimental school. In Taiwan, it is private from kindergarten to senior high school. They started their experimental education, and also they create their curriculum. So the curriculum in the school is very different from the public schools, and they purposefully put some courses responding to the Confucian 6 R's into their curriculum. So in the school, students need to learn about the tea ceremony. They need to learn about the archery. This cannot be seen in the normal school. And they rise by themselves. So we can see from the short videos in the school, everything looks very natural. That is an interesting example. Okay, here we go to the chapter A. The chapter A explores the embodiment theory in relation to art in Japan. Ayaki Monzen discusses 3 philosophers of Kyoto school to expose the meaning of art as communication. The production of art is activity that communicates the inner art of an individual and the outer world, the subjective and the objective, and the past and the ongoing present. The focus of the artistic production is not merely on creating fine arts, but on building the ethical community. As the author shows, the ethical community exemplified by the dormitory Azami, which was established to provide children with mild mental disability with effective access to education and social welfare. The products created by the members of the dormitory were called by Itoga the folk art or folk craft, which sheds a new light to communication through art. All right, this is the last chapter. Project Hana, provided by Dr. Choi from Korea. And this chapter focuses on educational practice in relation to traditional Korean art. The author, Choi, describes the development and implementation of the heritage art-based curriculum. Project Hana, as Choi puts it, traditional Korean art plays a special role in education to criticize the colonial past and defend national identity. Therefore, the most important point of Project Hana lies in the education of historical facts rather than aesthetic values. Project Hana, which integrates school education, teacher education, and museum education, exemplifies an education of an ethics of playful memory in a very thoughtful way, and brings readers to rethink the relationship between art and culture, aesthetics, and ethics. All right. So she uses this is one of the exhibition in the museum in the Edward Women's University Museum, and school teachers. The author had some collaboration with school teachers, and school teachers show the students to the exhibition, and then after that, school teachers directed students to create their own art, and then they demonstrate a final exhibition by the students, to collect their ideas, reflections. This is the exhibition by the students. Okay. All right. So this is the last. I think after hearing about this book, maybe we can think about how to develop intercultural collaboration and research in philosophy of education. Actually, we can do in many ways, right? Because through these 9 chapters, we can see there are very different approaches in how to proceed and work on intercultural and international projects. Yeah, I bet that you may provide new ideas. Okay, is that okay? Yeah, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ruru, for the insightful presentation. So, for now, it's time for us to question and answer session. For everyone here, please raise your hand, tell us your name and your institution. And for everyone who joining Zoom meeting, feel free to ask question by write down your question in the chat box or by directly speaking through your microphone after being invited by moderator. Okay, for the first question, okay, Mbak di depan yang kuning. And for the second question, I will be read in the chat box in Zoom. And for the third question, okay, yeah. So we already have 3 questions. Okay, thank you so much for the chance, for MC, moderator, and our speaker today, Prof. Ruru. Thank you for the chance, and I'm really interested about your presentation, but I'm curious how actually activity in the LP project, how to build and form the activity in the class, to link the culture, philosophy, and a subject matter in the class during the LP projects, and what the big purposes of the LP project also. And the second questions, from the chapter 1 until from the chapter 1 to chapter 9, I think that is it culture just a thing of the past? And if yes, how about the present? It could be the present could become a culture also. I think I have only 2 questions, and thank you for the chance. Good morning. Okay, thank you. Can you tell me your name and institution? I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce my name. My name is Mulan Alia Aziza. I'm a doctoral student of primary education. Thank you so much. Sorry, Prof. Ruru.
But for the question of Mbak Aziza, how about the answer?
Well, thank you very much for the questions. And the first question, how to, you mean connect nature to the classroom? Yeah, I think actually there are many ways, right? We can, if I take this book as an example, maybe there are ways of reading naturalist essays, or appreciating arts, a musical piece, works, and of course directly we can guide our students into the nature. This is also one way to experience the nature. But I think we can teach about and teach through nature in many different ways. And I think one of them is art, different kinds of art, media. And also, is culture only about past? I don't think so. I think culture lives in our lives. For example, on Monday, I joined the anniversary of the university. I feel so honored. And I saw they were dancing, Javanese dancing and music, this is a ritual. So as this book shows, rites or rituals are part of our life. It reflects and reminds us about the past. And so the past and the present and the future actually intertwined together. So it's not only about the past. Thank you. I think somehow there could be limitations, but we can still try to relate our teaching to culture as well, because a culture is such a very vague and broad term. So what part are you referring to? No. Yeah. We can. For example, design the cross-curriculum subject, or we can do the extracurricular activity. These are all opportunities for us as teachers to guide students to experience the culture. Thank you.
Okay, now we will move into the second question in the Zoom meeting. From Hesti Ariestina, doctoral student of elementary school education UNY. Prof. Ruru, I'm very interested in researches you have done. I've never thought the field of research to make publication. Could you please give us the information about how the international publisher will consider our article in this field deserves to be published?
Well, this is a very good question. Yeah, good. And it's very realistic, practical. Okay, I would suggest that as an author or an editor, the way that I do international publication, there are always two ways, right? One is to submit journal articles, and the second one is to submit book proposals to the international publisher. And the first one, of course, we have to select the suitable international journals. So first of all, if you want to publish your journal articles in international journals, you have to read them first to see the style, the style of the articles that they publish, to have some conversation with the authors that have already publication in that journal. That is one way. Okay, so I think this is more practical because many of us would like to submit for the international journals, right? Yeah, so when you select, you have, of course, there are so many journals. So you have to think about your own interest and the journals. And if you select few journals that you are interested in, you have to read their published articles and try to think, is my article suitable to this journal? Try to find the best one, and then try to format your article to fit their format. Okay, this is one way to submit to do the international publication. And the second one is the book. Of course, writing a book is takes more effort. For example, this book actually has taken me maybe more than 2 years together. Yeah, because I know everyone is busy. You have to teach a lot, right? And then you have to collect your minds, your ideas together, and writing it and revise it, and especially in English. So that's really challenging. And also, there are so many authors from different countries. So the communication as an editor, this is important. I need to, communicate with each author, one by one. So I actually spend a lot of time and effort with those authors. And also I need to communicate with the publisher. All right, and the process is like this. If you have some ideas for a book, first of all, you need to choose a publisher as well. So there are some very famous a worldwide publisher. For example, the Routledge or Springer, and Springer is also a famous one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Blackwell, yeah. So there are many, right? And check, because there are also a lot of introduction, right, on their website for authors. So there are kinds of, they will provide a format of book proposal. So you should get the file and try to put your ideas and in the file, the book proposal. And the book proposal, normally you need to finish maybe at least one chapter as a sample chapter. But you have to provide the whole idea of the whole book. For example, how many chapters that you plan to write in this book. And each chapter, what is the main idea of each chapter, and list them clearly. And you have to provide an introduction, description of the whole book. All right. And to fit in the file and then send it to the publisher. There will be manager editor for you according to the field, because each field there are different people responsible for this. And then if the publisher receive your proposal, they will send it to external reviewer, and then they will give you feedback to see if it is okay to publish it, if they accept or not. Yeah, sometimes we have to try more than once, many times. Yeah, it is possible, and don't feel frustrated. It is common to be rejected. Yes, so be brave. Okay, yeah, and of course, if you as a single author, it's really tiring because you need to finish one book, a big book, right? So collaborating is also good. If there are some authors together, for example, the colleagues together, you have one theme and especially one person as the corresponding editor, who will need to spend a lot of time to communicate with the publisher. For me, example, this book, I have contacted by 4 different editors from the publisher. They all, they're all responsible from different things. Sometimes for a proposal, sometimes for editing, and sometimes for production, all different, and sometimes for contracting, if they accept your proposal. So very complicated, right? Okay, is that okay?
Okay, thank you for the beneficial information. It's also not only for student but also for lecturer. Sometimes we have a struggle to publish article, especially in reputed international journal. Yeah. Okay, for the next question. Yeah. Yang kesalahan dulu. Dikeluarkan dulu nanti.
Well, I'm Dila from Instructional Technology of Yogyakarta State University. Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting to know other culture and history from other countries, especially Korea, China, and also Japan. But my main concern is how this approach affect the education of other countries, especially in Indonesia. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Prof. Ruru, what do you think about this question?
What is difficult one? I don't know how these cultures can affect the education in Indonesia. So far, I don't know. Maybe, for example, if you are interested in what I just said, maybe you will introduce to your students and they will make some difference, but I think in education one thing is important, that is to open our mind, to accept different things. So that's why I think keep our minds open to different things, new things. That is very important for educators. So I would like to know new ideas, new theories from different cultures and new languages. So that's why we collaborate together. And I believe we can find a lot of new inspirations, new things from Indonesian culture, from Georgia. Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now for the next question. Maybe two question or one of for okay. Ini tadi yang
Okay, thank you for the chain. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zakia Insani from the Elementary Education Master Program, Yogyakarta State University. Well, to be honest, I just saw your Instagram account, Prof. Ruru, and look at the professor post about SDIT LHI Elementary School. And in that post, Professor discussion about educating for ecophilia. The question is, what is the professor opinion about the implementation of natural school in Indonesia, and can art and nature-based education apply to early childhood? Apply for childhood. Early childhood. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you for the question. Prof. Ruru, please welcome.
Thank you very much for the question. I think ecophilia or ecological curriculum is very much good for early childhood. Yeah, because children, especially young kids, they're very natural. So even for them, it's so easy for them to accept the nature. And the school that I visited, LHI, yeah, I really appreciate the curriculum and the instruction they are doing. Is really, really illuminating. I would like to introduce how they have done to Taiwan, to let my colleagues and students know more about that. And I really appreciate them. And when I introduce in this presentation in chapter 7, Dr. Lee mentions about the school, Daohe School. And I think Daohe School has very, they take unique ancient Chinese cultural elements into their curriculum. And I also find echoing in the LHI, the school, because the school provides something distinctive from the culture. This is really good. Thank you.
Okay. Or maybe one question later, it's okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Lulu from doctoral program in elementary school. Today on my 53 years old, I feel so excited meet Professor Ruru that give a wide view about nature and culture. My expert area is mathematics. I have to try my dissertation on math learning for elementary school based on Islamic environmental ethics. So I think there is a connection about my dissertation with your research about nature. I try to implement the learning for elementary school, exploring the waste bank activity in the waste bank, bank sampah waste bank in Bantul. Is it right track about how to implement the learning with connection in nature? And about the you give about Chinese ink was painting. We have a painting, traditional painting batik. So in mathematics, that is art. The name is ethnomathematics. I have an article about how exploring the math learning in the Keraton Yogyakarta Castle. So I think I have a little part that maybe this is an implementation of your research about how the philosophical interculture blend on the math learning. And do you would you mind giving a comment about my try that is it on the track, or give something advice for me to explore, to develop the implementation? Thank you so much.
So her dissertation is about ethnomathematics. Ethnomathematics. So it's about pattern like and also it was for example address the use of them. So it can be included in the learning Islamic environment activities. And so what's your comment? Can you get what your suggestion for reason
Thank you very much for the question. Well, I have to say you are too modest because you are the expert in the ethnomathematics, but I'm not. So it could be very difficult for me to give you, suggestion. But I do admire the idea. I think it's valuable to find the connection between science, mathematics, and our culture. So as you do the ethnomathematics and try to study the pattern of batik, concerning mathematics, concerning culture studies, I think it's really, really brilliant. I look forward to your outcomes. Yeah, please do more on it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, for the audience, maybe I want to read one question from Zoom. Yeah, on Zoom. How to build intercultural and environmental awareness or competence of elementary school students in a developing country context?
Well, thank you. Is it important too? Very good question. Yeah, I think we have, as teachers, we should, try to get help or try to develop the sources for the students in class and try to develop our pedagogies, try to broaden the content of our curriculum to include different kinds of knowledge and information. I think this is a good way for teachers to bring new ideas and new things, new subjects to the schools. As long as we try, I believe our students can get benefit. So I would just encourage you to keep working. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ruru, for the question. For our audience, this is the end of the question and answer session. So we can conclude that we can develop our teaching ideas, our good experience in the class by the correlation of nature, art, and education. Yeah. So we can get some ideas from the insightful presentation of Prof. Ruru. Okay, then what's inspiring talks we have just had? We would really like to express our gratitude to Prof. Ruru and thank you for your inspiring and insightful presentation. So we give her an applause. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to apologize for any shortcomings and inconvenience during this guest lecture event. Now, I will hand the control back to the MC. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
All right. Thank you, Prof, for giving us such a wonderful insight and knowledge that hopefully will be beneficial and informative for us. And thank you, Mrs. Amel, for bringing us to a very productive session today. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to hand over an appreciation certificate for our speaker today. The certificate will be given by the head of Primary School Education Department, Dr. Anwar Senen, MPD, for Bapak Anwar Senen, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a photo session together with Prof. Ruru. You may stand up. Yeah. All right.
saya udah bisa pakai uang